Welcome everyone to the Plimpton School Committee meeting for Monday, October 23rd, 2017. We're going to jump right into this today. First, we'd like to acknowledge our visitors. We have Mrs. Ruth Kidd and Mrs. Jane Marie Sylvester joining us here in the audience of the TAC room. But no, thank you for joining us. And no other visitors. So we'll move right along. Do folks have an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from our last meeting, which was September 6th? Okay, so I would take a motion to accept them as submitted.
Make a motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. School committee correspondence. No, I actually left it at home. I got another one of those bills from the electrical folks.
Okay.
So we think we need to change where they're billing that, because since I'm not here very much anymore, since I don't have a kid here, tends
We'll take care
to
of that.
become a problem. I'll make sure I get that over here though. I'll figure that out the next day or two. I had it sitting right at my desk and I left without it. Other than that, I didn't have any other correspondence, at least in here. Okay. Right on to new business. If you recall, back in the summer, we approved that I could sign certain warrants when we were not meeting or there was a need to be single signature warrants. So as part of that process, one of the things that I was supposed to do, which I neglected to do last time, was to let you know that you had signed some. So the first one, the one that I did sign prior to our last meeting in August, was for a consultant for the water treatment. It was a warrant article of just over $4,700. I then, in September, because we did not have our regularly scheduled meeting, because we had it earlier in the month, because of the bids, I did sign a series of sort of standard warrants for encumbrance, circuit breaker, utilities, sped, another encumbrance totaling about another $82,000. And then we had a second payment for our consultant of just over $4,100, which I approved in early October. So consider yourselves to do those. And then we have our warrants today, which we get to do the old-fashioned way. We all get to sign. Moving on to unfinished business. I don't have any updates on the Dennett driveway sign. Since when is he here? I don't know of anything from, because it's running through CASA, so I haven't heard on that. Community garden looks good out there. They got that nicely planted. And of course, really dry right now, so that's not ideal for it. But that looked nice, and I have to admit to the public that we were talking about it last time, about how it should go in, and then I left here and it was there.
Yeah.
So apparently it happened really quick. By that time it came, I apparently didn't see it on the way in. So it does look great, and thanks to the folks who made that happen. Water treatment. So where we are with that is not much further than where we were last time. As you know, we had two bids that were sort of well above where we expected them to be. Garrett Keegan and I both put letters together, which we provided to the Department of Environmental Protection, asking for them to consider some changes to the potential design of the system, and there were some waivers. And this is certainly at their suggestion that we did this. I think I sent the copies of those letters around to all of you for your records. Those are with DEP. We think that the person they went to has been on vacation. So Garrett was following up again today to try and see if we can get a meeting set up and some movement on that. If we aren't able to get much movement from DEP, then we're going to have to look at other alternatives in order to be able to get this funded and move along. But right now, I would we want to try and get some feedback from DEP before we proceed. So my hope is that before our next meeting, we will have that, and we'll have some more reasonable updates at that time. And I don't think we have any updates on playground safety at this time. So on to standing committees. We have an administrative review.
Yes.
One of our members was nominated chair. He didn't step back fast enough.
Yeah, he also stepping up. I don't know what to tell you. So we met Thursday, the 12th. We reorganized the committee. We also voted on the November 16th, 2016 minutes. We reviewed and approved the superintendent's goals, which have already been sent out to everybody. We also reviewed the shared contracts. We have two, Joy's and Grable's. But we're holding that because nobody really had a chance to review anything we got on that day. So we will discuss that again on the future meeting, which is scheduled for December 4th at 6. And we adjourn. And that's pretty much it.
Okay,
It's a good meeting.
great. There have been no meetings with respect to negotiations. Those are all sorted at this point, which is very fine.
Yes, great.
Union 31,
No meeting.
no meeting since the PAC. Jason isn't with us tonight, so we'll have to hold an update to the next meeting for that. I don't think any policy. No. Capital improvement.
We'll talk a little bit when we discuss the budget. Some
Okay.
ideas.
Great. And then again, with Jason's absence, legislative will have to hold till next time. So that brings us very quickly to you, Mr. Peter.
Thank you very much. My report is actually kind of short this month, starting with our enrollment. We're at 207 students. We have some important dates to remember coming up. Picture retake day is November 6th. Grade 3 will also be taking a trip to Plymouth Plantation that day. Very exciting. November 10th will be Veterans Day Remembrance, no school. One of our big days on the calendar is November 15th. That is our Thanksgiving feast. That will be at 11:30. November 22nd, we have a noon dismissal. No lunch will be served. I'll send an email reminder to the parents. Our Thanksgiving break is November 23rd to the 24th. And we'll be back here on November 27th for school committee at 5 o'clock.
Right?
John, I also wanted to give an update on the electrical situation that we had in the building
Yep.
just about a month ago. Just as a very brief reminder, we were having an issue with some motion sensor relays that were failing in some of the restrooms. We had a number of them. We lost power, and then the next day we had a very odd smell coming from the bathroom, an electric smell. So sure enough, we had the fire department come down. They, along with the help of the building inspector, determined that these little devices were failing. Basically, we had all 28 of them removed. That's a long story short. And where we're at right now with our electrician, I'm still awaiting the results of the analysis which is being conducted by the manufacturer of the lighting control products which were damaged or destroyed. My hope is that they can provide some direction in terms of the problem, be it power quality or some other defect. From conversations which I've had with your staff, it appears that some sort of generator is not convinced that there's a problem with the generator output. Consequently, I suspect that in order to substantiate that possibility, some testing will need to be undertaken. I plan to schedule a meeting at your facility with a social generator representative and myself as soon as we have the results from the manufacturer, which could be early next week. So the long story short is they don't know exactly why that was happening. The problem has been isolated because we removed those particular items which were failing. So,
Were those switches that we had put in as part of the green
no, to
initiative?
my knowledge,
They're
those
just
were here with, they've been here since the addition.
so they've been working fine for
To the best of my
14
knowledge, yes.
years. Well, they haven't been smelling
Correct.
for 14 years, and now all of a sudden and they all failed pretty much in sequence.
The ones that did fail, the first one was during the day. Later that night around 5, Chris Woods found another. We had the fire watch that night, and when Chris came in the next morning, he immediately checked all the bathrooms and found 2 more that had failed.
So we had 4 within 24 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's odd.
So it's a conversation between our staff here, our electrician, and social generator, because somewhere along the line, somebody's area of expertise was not working properly.
Right.
And I think we have to have everybody in the room at the same time to have that conversation.
And we have just regular light switches in there now? Is that what we had to go to?
Essentially, yes. We pretty much just
Like
bypass the
just
relay. Yep.
up and
Very
down?
technologically sound.
Kind of like paper.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for the update. I would just like to extend a thank you to the fire department, particularly given that they really stepped up here. I mean, this is probably the most expensive resource that we have in town as far as the building, and not having it would, I don't even, I was trying to think about what would happen, and nothing's good from that.
Right.
Kids in the Silver Lake gym and stuff was just not a good thought.
No.
So, so thank you very much to the fire department for everything that they did for this, also for the building inspector was up here too.
Yes.
And all of the other town staff that's sort of jumped in to very quickly to help out, and also to Mr. Woods for his diligence.
Absolutely.
It's really great. So hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that, and we can go back to having lights shut off when no one's in the bathroom. Okay, thank you. So, okay. We will hold on a CASA update, so that brings us to you for the rest of the show.
Thank you. So Jill was unable to make it today. She went to a training on the grants and drove up from Seekonk to Marlborough, and then it seemed a little silly to then drive to Plimpton and then back to Seekonk. So we thought I would save her a little bit, and I would just do her report. So Jill does these monthly updates, and she calls them progress reports, which are very thorough, and it's one of the attachments that you received in our attempt to go paperless. I admit I'm going old school, and it's easy for me to see with paper and pen here. So she went over a lot of the things that have been going on. One of the things that she talked about was the SPURT plan, which is a requirement on the secondary level, and it's for screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. And it's really part of our efforts to prevent substance abuse on the secondary level. There also was a PowerPoint which was accidentally attached. It was shown at Silver Lake because those are the students that are directly impacted, but it is information that may be of interest to you, especially if you happen to have a little bit older students. The other thing she mentioned was some of the social and emotional learning things, the 5 core competencies that we've been talking about, and there's an attachment that she put in with a red, blue, and green wheel that sort of looks like this and goes through it. On our professional development day, we had a presenter from the Research for Better Teaching, and it was on highly effective teaching. And it really builds on student capacity and teachers' capacity to look at a growth mindset, that you can always learn, you can always be smarter, you are not just born smart, so that you can be taught there are new things that you can learn. And really, it is an attempt to build on helping our students to believe in themselves, and that inclusive practices model that we've really been focusing on, that all students can be successful. We just need to figure out how to help them all to be as successful as possible. So we had a presenter that came in, and she did a nice job for some of the staff. Some of the information may have felt like a review, but again, I don't think it ever hurts for us all to rehear some of that model. Again, we all require all of our teachers to take our studying skillful teaching class when they start with us, and so it's sort of built on that and review the foundation. Some of the other things Jill talked about was the Professional Development Committee and how she has monthly meetings set up. The other thing was she is having all of the administrators take a three full-day trainings on highly effective teaching for us to go in and to do evaluations of our staff. We need to make sure that we're knowing what to look for within the classroom. You know, are the teachers using some of these skills? Are they using some of the 50 areas that really help? There's 50, tricks of the trade, but 50 things that are sort of, I believe in you, you can do it, some means for teaching that will be useful. So we'll be going through 3 days of training for that. The MCAS results will be coming any day now. You may remember that the state moved to computer online testing, so we'd get the results earlier. So of course we're getting them later. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that. And sorry. but it's true. So we will be getting them soon. The public information has just been released, but we haven't received the actual student results. But we will be receiving them any day, and then we'll filter them out to the schools, and they will then go home to parents. So traditionally, I have had Marie speak in November, but since MCAS is coming out, we have to have November be the MCAS presentation. So I've had to move Marie to December. So I've changed that timeline for what we usually do, because to have MCAS results and Marie at the same meeting, I think would probably be a long meeting. So we've moved that around. But we do expect the MCAS results any day, and we will get those right out to parents as soon as possible. The schools are ready for them.
And I think it probably is just important to remind folks that this was a different test.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be a little difficult to compare
There is no
prior
comparison.
scores to this. There
Yes.
was a whole story on that I heard
Yep.
on NPR. But it's just important for folks to remember it was a completely different test,
Absolutely.
different way it was taken, different expectations in it. And then we also have the difference too, that we did MCAS, then we did PARC, now we're doing MCAS 2.0. So,
Exactly.
you know, we'll see what the numbers look like, but
There is no
this
comparison.
is kind of
Good point.
a new start.
Absolutely. So the only test that will be graded the same way, using the same language, is science.
Science.
5th grade science. So 5th and 8th grade science will be the same. On the high school level, they have not moved to the new next generation MCAS, so that will still be the same language. But there isn't any comparison, to your point. So the results are based on children taking the test on the computer. It's a new way of testing. It's new information for them. And I think we, luckily for us, we did do the prior year on the computer, so the children had some experience, but again, you can't compare the old MCAS to the new. And again, she'll do a presentation for you in November with more specifics. And let's see. The other thing that we had asked was we wanted to invite Melissa Farrell to join us this evening. Melissa is the K-6 curriculum coordinator, and I believe all of you have met her, at least I hope you have. Melissa's done a great job for us, helping with all the different curriculums, kindergarten through grade 6. And the other thing is she has become our Title I director. And she's really done a wonderful job. Previously, that used to be under the assistant superintendent. And when I moved out, I appointed Melissa as the Title I director to sort of spread the wealth a little bit, because the assistant superintendent job was spread a little too thin, I knew from personal experience. So Melissa has really taken Title I much farther than I ever was able to. So she's going to go through some of the curriculum areas which are really important to look at as we're building budgets, and also to talk about some of the great things that are happening in Title I.
So we'll do the slide first, which is the sort of the district overview of the Title I budget. So the district gets somewhere between $330,000 and $340,000 for Title I, and Plimpton is one of the school districts that really gets to benefit from that, because we can pull money from the entire region to support different trainings and things of that nature. But you can see on there that we report to the state in October and in March the number of students that are receiving Title I services, and it fluctuates throughout the year based on targeted assistance. All of the students who receive Title I services have to be identified with 2 data points to determine their eligibility, and that can be one score on some assessment and then a teacher recommendation. And predominantly in this building we service kids in grades 3 through 5, but this year we're actually servicing more grade levels with a targeted intervention service. Jean Kuja is the Title I funded position in this building, and she works 19 and a half hours a week part-time. So we had, I took over this position 3 years ago, and we started to assess the program and look at how we were providing services, how we were identifying students for services, and try and revamp and be a little more strategic in what we are doing. So there are different aspects to Title I. There are the servicing of students that are supplemental to the regular instruction, and then there's a family engagement piece. So last year there was a big Dr. Seuss event here, and so each year there will be one evening event for families to bring families in with their children and do activities surrounding reading and math together, to sort of a celebration of learning in that regard. So we did that, and then we do summer programming. Dennett has become the host for summer programming for Halifax and Dennett. They decided to get a new roof, just a little project that impacted. But there was a lot of enjoyment in the fact that this building was air conditioned.
A lot of enjoyment.
I don't know if they're ever going to leave. But it was the kids mix, so it was a nice event for kids that are eventually going to spend time together. We had teachers that were previous teachers in the district who came back to do summer school, teachers from Kingston that came to Dennett to work in these classrooms. So there was a nice sort of community aspect to that by hosting it here. So thank you to Peter for his willingness to put up with us and then host the students throughout the summer. We've looked at the Title I program as to what we're providing for reading interventions, what resources that we're using, training our reading interventionists. All of the Title I staff are certified teachers. Some of them have a really strong reading background. Some of them are people who are new to education, who are working to get in and have a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. So trying to bring them with some training to support the reading specialist sort of framework that these people are working in, and then also giving them curriculum resources to support that. So trying to do a lot more guided reading groups throughout the years. So we've brought in benchmarking, we've brought in training, we've brought curriculum resources, we've done data analysis, all sort of in collaboration with the Title I budget and with the school budget to move the reading intervention program forward. And to be more systematic. And I think that I don't have any specific data that I can share, but we could definitely pull it to look at kids that have gone in and out of services to see that growth. And not that what we're doing is perfect, but we consistently say that our job is about progress, not perfection, and that we've worked a lot to sort of like move the reading intervention program forward throughout the years. So that's Title I, sort of in an overview. And there's a picture of a Title I teacher there working with a small group of kids over in Halifax. And then the other...
I'm sorry, can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
The Kingston Intermediate, they look like, are they doing something different than everybody else?
So their numbers dropped. Are you looking at that?
Yeah.
So they're a perfect example of where we are looking at whether we're doing services in the classroom or out of the classroom. And also using a lot of data to determine what kids are receiving services. So there were a lot of kids in Kingston that were receiving services, and a small group lesson at the beginning there could have 5 or 6 kids. We know that that's not ideal. We want to drop that number down. So we brought every kid in, and then we're able to systematically move kids out of receiving services, put them back into the classroom, and either add a support person in the classroom with them or put those students on what we call a watch. So in that building, there was a significant drop in the number of students, and mostly it was because we were able to see that number designates a lot of summer regression, where Kingston Elementary School, you look at those high numbers, those are young kids that are struggling to determine those foundational skills in reading, and it'll stay pretty consistent. A lot of third graders come in, and if they haven't done any reading over the summer, that initial data pool on them in September shows huge regression. But it just takes about 2 months of getting them back up to speed and sort of getting things warmed back up, and then we can move them back into the classroom. So we definitely saw that in 3rd and 4th grade, and that was a huge impact on the numbers there. We're also doing a little bit of work using a computer program called Lexia. So those kids that we're noticing a very specific like phonological deficit, giving them online practice with just repetition of learning basic letter sounds and things of that nature, so we've been able to target kids differently. So that
that's still turned on, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is still turned on. And some of it's been turned back on for certain kids. We had it for the summer. So it's so we're trying, how can we best utilize our resources? What are all the different ways that we can sort of attack kids around reading intervention? And it doesn't work. Some kids loved the online stuff. We had some parents who emailed us this summer and said, not working for my kid. And they're like, but I'm taking them to the library every week and reading. We're like, great, just keep it up. So that's it. And that was new this summer, was that we actually, previously in Dennett, there had been no support for kids, grades 3, 4, and 5 in the summer. And this summer we did and there was some online monitoring that went with that, where you had a reading teacher assigned to the students and they followed through on different things. Any other questions on this?
No, I was just wondering. They look like they're doing something good over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. different, it's just a different population. I
Yeah,
think
that's what.
that age level, you know, looking at the building. So then on the back page here, this is an overview of the district, just from a standpoint of what is our core curriculum resource. It's not the only resource that teachers are using, but it is the core for our math curriculum specifically. So if you'll notice there, K to 6, we have 3 different math curriculums that we use, and one of them is up for a subscription renewal at the end of next year for grades 4 and 5. So we have an opportunity that's building to try and look at that and evaluate that. We know that our students struggle between 3rd and 4th grade. Our performance shows that. So we have an opportunity to sort of revisit that and look at that and identify what is the best resource for the classroom and for our students. I can see about 6 different versions of what that might look like, but it's definitely something that we're investigating. And I have 2 cohorts of teachers going to math networks that are put on by the state this year. One is a K-3 network, and then one is a 4-5 network that we're using to sort of just get the conversation around math, to start talking about it and looking at it and seeing what makes the most sense. Our math curriculum, the Envisions, it's not bad, but just like we have a new MCAS, our curriculum resources aren't providing our students with the questions that they need at the level that they need it, and it doesn't have the computer component to it. So I think that there's a technology piece here and there's a classroom curriculum piece here that we need to start having a conversation about and how to best support the kids. Then around reading, we're pretty consistent throughout the district. 6th grade really focuses on 3 novels. And then in the reading intervention there, that's the new intervention system that came in, which is really an opportunity just to place a lot of books in the hands of kids that are at their specific level. We've added phonics last year with fidelity across the district to help support that piece with students. My first year we brought writing in K to 5, and we've now added 6th grade to sort of have a consistent writing curriculum where students are writing in the 3 genres throughout the grade levels and building upon that as it grows. Science, this year the big introduction and move is around 6th grade science. We actually have a training this Thursday with a gentleman from Cambridge College who's coming in to work with our 6th grade teachers, and they have a pretty fancy online computer adaptive textbook that they're using as a resource to look at the new frameworks in 6th grade. And then we get to social studies, and I learned today that we are going to be receiving new social studies frameworks in June of this year.
I'll believe
So
it when I see it.
2018.
I've been seeing it for
Rumor,
years.
as I heard today from, I think his name is Noble.
Oh, yeah, Ron Noble.
Ron Noble, his quote was that they are written, they should be out for review, and they should be approved by the board by June of 2018.
I'm not holding my breath.
So, but for right now, I think that
Sorry. Talking about right now.
the social studies, in my mind, is an opportunity where I think we can do some internal curriculum development. It's something that Jill has worked with us as the curriculum coordinators around, is having a consistent template for curriculum development throughout the district. The teachers have resources that they're using, they're pulling from different things. It doesn't have to necessarily be a book. We do use some Massachusetts books for 3rd grade, and everyone goes to Plymouth Plantation across the entire state. So there's some consistencies in that regard. But I guess from my standpoint, my view is looking at this and seeing where our vertical articulation is not clean or smooth, and then how is it also going with our vertical articulation so kids are all entering into 7th grade with some consistency. And the piece that I see that's not on this is our computer literacy skills too, and so looking at that piece of it and how we're sort of addressing those frameworks. So this is one aspect of the curriculum, which are sort of what we think of as like these big purchase items, but then there's all these other sort of pieces that come together. But this was helpful to me to put this document together and sort of give a little bit of an overview and also highlight how much progress and forward momentum has occurred, even just in the last 4 years since I've been here. Any questions on this?
So basically, let me just ask this question.
Yep.
So for sixth grade,
Mhm.
so basically, all schools are using the same, are they using the same,
For,
what is
Novels?
this?
Novels, the books.
But just the same model we have here, they're going across the board,
Yes.
everybody's
Yes.
the same?
yes.
Okay.
So sixth grade science has been a nice opportunity to bring all the sixth grade science teachers together this year for professional development, looking at the new frameworks and how they're taught in a similar curriculum resource.
And how about like, the sixth grade teachers in the entire district working with the seventh grade to be able to get the students ready for that seventh grade transition?
Yep.
Because I can speak from experience that my daughter,
Yep.
when she moved to seventh, was a big adjustment. She went through it, she worked really hard, but it seemed like it's a challenge.
There's a lot of conversation. I mean, the hard thing is that I meet with Kevin and Jamie and Scott, who are the 7-12 coordinators for math, science, and ELA, but there aren't as many opportunities to do like sixth grade teachers with seventh and eighth grade teachers. This year in science, we're doing it 3 times. That's the most that I've ever seen it happen in my time here. So it's definitely something that's on our radar, and it's important because those conversations just in some ways also help to validate what is happening in sixth grade and better understanding of what's happening in sixth grade, where that communication is happening every day between seventh and eighth grade. So I think building those conversations there, sharing the work that's happening in writing. There's some assessments that are given at the end of sixth grade that are used for middle school stuff around how kids are placed in different classes and things. And you know, to me, there's an opportunity for conversation is looking what we're currently doing in sixth grade and how can we use the data we have on our students and communicate that more effectively with the middle school versus a test, which I don't think always tells exactly who a student is.
Yeah.
So I think there's those pieces of it. It's definitely something where I don't think we're perfect and we could do better at. It's a logistical thing that's really difficult. Even just the timing of the middle school schedule from 7 to 2 and we're 8:30 to 3. Runs into some headaches along the way. But I think that 6, 7, and 8 have the same math curriculum, and as we transition and look at those changes and look at curriculum resources, it's an opportunity to bring everybody on board.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I'm talking about also the workload too.
Yeah.
How much it increases to the middle school and how maybe everybody's not prepared enough, maybe through the middle of the year, you know what I mean? Like, a different gear needs to turn. Not to the extent of what they're doing, but just kind of a little bit more, just so that they're not in this shock, like, I got all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's-
And-
It's a lot.
Transition from, right now you either have in this district, the most you can have is 4 teachers, and that's in Halifax. Here it's 2, in Kingston it's 2, and then you go to 6 or 7, depending upon what your daily schedule looks like at the middle school. So that in itself is quite a transition, because I even know if you talk with a 6th grade teacher here, if she teaches math and science, they're not assigning both of those as homework on the same night, because they have control over it and they can transition that. So it might be interesting just to gather some more data around what are the nightly expectations and what are the daily expectations for a 7th grader, and sharing that with the 6th grade and seeing where it falls in the continuum.
And I would suggest, though, that it even needs to be shared the opposite way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm living through it right now because I have a new 7th grader who is quite a good student and claims that everything is going fine, but I can tell that he is a little stressed. And there is a lot. And the fact, I think, too, that I get the Moto stuff, and I've got to figure out a way to turn that off, because if I get another email like that, I'm going to be stressed because I think of all the stuff that I probably have to check on that he's doing. So, I mean, it's just that, and then the pace of the day is so fast, too. you know, they move from next to next to next to next. There's a little bit of a break, but it's tiny, and, you know, so there's this whole piece that I'm not sure that just sort of saying to the 6th grade teachers, you need to get them adapted for that is gonna, I think the whole thing needs to sort of be looked at. Because I think for, you know, a kid that also is perhaps struggling with some of the subjects, I can't imagine what that additional pressure is. You know, he doesn't want to come back.
Right.
He's happy to have the bigger environment,
Right.
and they were
Yeah,
ready for
They want
it.
to come back.
No,
But
no.
it is a
It's
huge
a
adjustment.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the things that we can do, it's great, but I think that would be just a good, interesting conversation.
I think that that's where, like, sometimes I'll describe my job as K to 5 and 6, because 6 is so different.
Yeah.
You know, and so I feel like there's this continuum K to 5, and then I kind of like close the door, and then I open the next door, and I walk into 6th grade. And so I think that, and my background is in middle school. That was a 5 through 8 building.
Right.
And so I always kind of open the door and see 6, 7, 8. But it's very difficult because there's a physical barrier
Right.
between those two.
Right.
But I think that that's something that's definitely worth investigating, and me just understanding a little bit better about what life is like at the middle school, and then sort of being able to have those conversations here and see how I can bridge that. And also look at what are the supports for families? What are the
Right.
supports for parents? Like, are we preparing you for that transition to middle school? We find kids are often extremely resilient.
Yeah, I'm not sure we could go and do a day. I think we would be really tired,
Yeah.
being there, getting there at 7 and change, and
I would
the
agree.
2 would be like, okay, it's time for a nap.
Yeah.
I just, because it's, I mean, we of course forgot, because I think most of us left high school and went to college and like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
You know, I have 4 classes, you know, I have time between them, I can think,
Yeah.
you know, instead of, you know,
Yeah.
running from that. So it's, I get it, but there is definitely a
Sure. No, it's
The
hard.
middle school does have the model of neighborhoods and teams,
Yep.
which I'm very glad that we have.
Yeah, if we didn't have that, you think you're stressed now.
Oh,
You should
no,
say.
I'm-
That
I can
is a-
see a lot of work has
Yes,
been done to
yes.
try and get us to where we
Yeah.
are, so.
Yeah.
No, that's good, so thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I'll definitely keep it on my radar.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much.
One of the reasons why we were looking at some of the curriculum resources was way back, probably about 8 years ago, I had done something similar, and it was really very helpful as we were preparing budgets to sort of have an idea of some of the curriculums that were upcoming and what we needed. The good news is, if you look at this, assuming maybe social studies will come out, which I find hard to believe, but it could happen, there is not going to be a need to make any major curriculum purchases for this upcoming budget season. So, you know, now that we have science and we have all those new materials, we'll be in pretty good shape this year. So there will not be a major investment for curriculum. But to Melissa's point, we'll have social studies coming up, and also we'll have the math. That online subscription will be ending. So those 2 things will be there. Financial report. So Christine prepared the financial report for us. And there's only a couple of things. Again, we're still pretty early on. Everything looks great. We gave you a hard copy because this is so small and it's really difficult to look at online. So let me know as we go forward which ones you want hard copies of. But we did the agenda and we did the financial as well as the enrollment, because those seemed very helpful to have. In terms of some of the financial situations, you may remember last month we talked about the professional development. The tuition reimbursement was in a negative. Right now there's a deficit of about $3,880, and that's on page 1 of the detail, about 2/3 of the way down. And we just have a lot of activities this summer into early fall, and that is a number as we're building the budget that I think we're going to need to look at increasing next year, because pretty clearly that is just not going to be adequate for what we have in there. You know, the teachers are required to receive their master's within the first 5 years. If they get an extension, they can go to 10 years, but we do have some people who are who need to complete those requirements, so, and it does add up pretty quickly.
And this isn't a bad thing.
No, this is a great thing, thank you.
That's the
Yes,
point I
good
think
point,
needs to
thank
be
you.
made, is that
Yep.
this is an investment in the staff and in the
Exactly.
school. that has a direct impact. on
Absolutely.
students.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of what happened on this one was we had some people who took some classes which were towards the end of the year, but they didn't get their grades, so that we weren't able to reimburse them until they crossed over the fiscal year. So they had classes for the new fiscal year as well as some that they had completed in the old fiscal year. So that's how we ended up with it being in the negative.
And that's a requirement
And
in the
that's
contract.
Exactly, that's
So
required,
it's not-
exactly.
Not like we could change that.
No.
Nor would we want to. The
No.
point is you need the grades to
Exactly.
be able to
Exactly.
know it's a payout.
Yep. And then the second area that she wanted me to point out was the special education out-of-district tuition. When the budget was developed, she budgeted under one tuition account, but for record-keeping purposes, she's categorizing the expenditures according to their type of placement. The area as a whole has a surplus right now, and by the end of next month, she expects to be able to break that down to where it goes, and we don't anticipate there being any true negative balances. And then on the last page is some great news on the out-of-district vocational. When we built the budget, we accounted for tuition and transportation for all of the enrolled students. And the FY18 budget included 8 spots, because that's what number of people that had applied, but only 5 went. So at this point, if nothing changes, we're expecting a surplus of approximately $105,000. So that would be grand news if that happens. So unless somebody moves into the district, we should be in great shape for that area.
Okay.
Special Education Stabilization Fund. So this is something that Jason and I have had a couple of conversations, and unfortunately Jason was unable to be here this evening, so I'm just going to do a very short introduction about it. The state has a program for establishing a special education stabilization fund. The idea of it is that if you have students who move in unexpectedly and you hadn't accounted for it, it would provide sort of a savings account that you could use for those students. I brought this forward in both Halifax and Kingston, and it's actually on the fall town warrant for Kingston at this point in time. The selectmen, at least, are very supportive of the idea. The stabilization fund can't be more than 2% of the net school spending, and so for Plimpton, that works out to be it was 47.
45,000.
About $45,000, $47,000 for Plimpton. In order to set up a stabilization fund, it has to be voted at town meeting for them to approve it. In order to move forward, we would need to have some conversations with the Finance Committee and the Selectmen. I had a fairly lengthy conversation with Jay Sullivan, who's the Associate Commissioner for District and School Finance. And my thought on the program would be to establish a line item with the town support, if they were so choosing, to put a small amount of money in it, maybe $500 or $1,000. Because once we have a line item, remember we have line item autonomy as a school committee. So if there is money left, the school committee could vote to move it into that stabilization account as long as you had the line item established. Not that we would increase our budget by $47,000 to have it, but to make use of it as a place, instead of returning money to the town, we could fill that stabilization fund until we had hit the maximum. The money would have already been voted by the town. We're not adding money to the town. What would happen is we just wouldn't be returning money to the town. So for us, it would be sort of a cushion for those unexpected tuitions that can happen. For example, last year, Plimpton had a great year, but Kingston didn't. I had to go before town meeting in Kingston and ask for an extra $450,000 because of additional students that we had not anticipated. The town was very supportive. They were wonderful about it. It was not a day that I was enjoying, going before town meeting asking for that. In Halifax, I had to ask for $156,000. So it's something that can happen. Luckily, Plimpton has not had the experience. We have been very lucky, but again, who knows when the law can change. So what can happen is we have a student who's placed in a collaborative that may run about $40,000. Maybe the student suddenly has some medical issues or has some other issues and requires a more expensive placement. we're required to fund that placement. Those placements would go from 40,000 to, if it's an expensive school like Higashi School or Cardinal Cushion, well over 100,000 without even blinking. And then you have to also figure transportation. So those kinds of things happen, and we don't always have a means to fund them. So I'd like to just give you a little bit of information on this, and I'd like to continue the conversation, if it's okay, next month when Jason's back, because I know this is something Jason has had some beginning conversations with the selectmen about. And again, I'm just presenting it as information. I don't have a vote in this. Intellectually, I don't understand why it's not a good idea, you know, as a sort of a protection. But
And I mean, Jason and I did speak with the selectmen, I think some of the finance committee members might have even been in that meeting as well. I think town accountant was definitely there, and so town treasurer. And you know, conceptually, the selectmen were supportive.
Great.
I mean, it fits into what we've been trying to do as a town, trying to be more thoughtful in our planning and more thoughtful in our outlook. And, you know, I think we would have to have further discussions with them about how they would like to see us do that. I know that we do have line item authority, but I think probably we would probably lean towards communicating.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
before we would take
No,
that
absolutely.
opportunity
Yep.
to make sure that finance committee and the selectmen were good with what we were going to do, and then go ahead and vote it.
And that would absolutely be
So I
my
think that's
recommendation
the-
also.
yeah.
The other thing is we can't access that fund until we had approval by selectmen. So once the fund is set up, if we filled it to that 2%, 47,000, we can't use any of that money without a vote in support of the selectmen.
Right.
So it's got a lot of controls on it.
Yeah.
And again, it seems to be a good means
Yeah,
of
I think the
bit-
only
bit of
thing
protection.
that's awful about it is the 2%.
Exactly.
Because yes, 47,000 certainly it's better than us not having that, because we got to come up with 47,000
Right.
somewhere else. But it's likely if we have an off year that that's not going to be enough.
Absolutely. I
But
agree.
it will at least cushion the blow, and therefore it makes sense in years that are better
Right.
to make sure we at least have that fund again.
I agree.
So it's a good thing.
Yep, absolutely. And then the other thing we have, and again, you have a hard copy of this, and I believe the color is called goldenrod. I think that's what we decided it was called. It's a great color, actually. And this is our enrollment for the district. So just to sort of go through this a little bit, I'm going to go through what I'm calling the front first, which is the one that has all the lines on it. And this is the enrollment. So you'll see Plimpton is just a little bit over halfway down. Okay, so just to sort of help you understand the way it's laid out, KDG is kindergarten. So there are currently 29 students in kindergarten. SCK is school choice kindergarten. So you'll notice that only Plimpton has children in the school choice column, because only Plimpton is our only school system with school choice. So you have one student in school choice in kindergarten. First grade, we have 28 with one student in school choice, 33 grade 2, 2 students in school choice. You can sort of see how we go across. These are the numbers as of October 1, which is the date the state is calling for the official enrollments. Jason spoke a little bit, I think last month here, as well as Silver Lake, that the state is looking at possibly doing enrollments in April, which would really be different because that's when we have the most students, which is kind of interesting, but they're thinking about changing the enrollment dates. I'll be curious to see how that plays
How
out.
does that work with the budgets?
I don't know.
Because you have to get
We'd
the
have to use
allocations.
last year's numbers. So it's interesting. It's
Took
an
a step
interest.
back.
It seems like it. Jason spoke that it was a positive thing, and I guess it must have been Silver Lake. It must not have been here when he
No.
spoke about it. But he's become pretty active in terms of his movements with MASC and the legislature, and they're talking about moving it because in October there's still a lot of movements back and forth, and by April everybody's settled, and those are the real numbers.
But you're not using them for another year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I mean, that was sort of my take also.
Maybe January would be better.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's sort of somewhere in between, because you get too far into,
Yeah.
I don't think people are necessarily thinking about the town planning.
I'm just used to October, so I'm not sure why we need to change it, but I'm probably several steps behind.
It's just grants.
Yes.
That's how grants run.
Yeah.
So your grant funding is not based on your current enrollment, but actually the previous
Previous years.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
but budget planning, the budget has to be, I mean, you can't.
I'm just
I mean,
thinking
I
about us
guess you
doing
would-
the assessments for the region, I can just imagine that one.
You'd be
It's just-
changing it from the point that the warrant had closed,
Yeah.
you know, at least for Plimpton, the warrant closes the end of March. So
yeah.
you'd have to adjust the budget on town meeting floor every year.
That'd be a lot of fun.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, maybe it's time to retire. So we have 207 students in Plimpton in the elementary school. At the middle school, we have 32 seventh graders and 40 eighth graders. So we have 72 students at the middle school. And then at the high school, we actually have 138. And one of the things I sort of wanted to point out to you is, look at the numbers on the secondary level. All the numbers, the lowest grade has 32 students and the highest has 40. So obviously the numbers on the secondary level are high, and the numbers on the elementary level, the class sizes have been smaller. There's some ups and downs, but in general the numbers on the secondary are higher. You're going to see in a minute why I'm pointing that out.
Yes.
So yeah, so when you flip it over, here's where it gets intriguing. So if we're going to look at the Silver Lake FY assessment percentages, so that's how much the town of Plimpton has to pay into for our students up at Silver Lake. So last year, Halifax had 32.1% of the students on the secondary level. This year they have 32, so a decrease of 0.1%. Kingston had 56.5%, and they have had a huge drop to 55.7%. Now, with 2 of the 3 districts dropping, somebody had to grow, and unfortunately for Plimpton, Plimpton is the district that had a huge increase in that percentage. So last year, Plimpton had 11.4% of the population. This year, it had 12.3% of the population. So Plimpton is going to pay a much larger percentage of the Silver Lake assessment this year because they have a higher percentage of the students on the secondary level. And for Plimpton, that's quite a large jump. That's almost a full percentage point.
You don't see it here in the 5 years looking back.
Exactly. So it's really the first time in a very long time that Plimpton has had a huge increase like this.
So we went up half that amount this year.
We went from 11 to 11.4, but the year before we had been 11.4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We never look back at what we
No, it's
paid.
true,
We look
it's
back
true.
at what was last year and where's
It's
it going
true.
this year.
It's true. No, it's true. So, since I've been here, I can't remember Plimpton ever having an increase like that. Kingston has. Kingston has had some ups and downs. I mean, if you look at 17 to 18, went from 54.6 to 56.5. I mean, it was almost 2 full percentage points. But again, this year with Plimpton, if you look at the numbers, you can sort of see what is happening is the larger classes are all up on the secondary level at this point. So it's going to be a difficult budget season on the secondary level for Plimpton based on these numbers so far.
Fun.
Yeah, I know, I'm excited. And then on the
So-
bottom,
So maybe that 3rd grade class isn't so bad.
yes,
It's up there.
exactly. The FY, the shared cost budget, and those numbers are the ones that pay for my office. They pay for our building, they pay my salary, Marie's salary, Jill's salary, Christine Healy's salary. Last year, Halifax had 32.5%. This year, they have an increase because they have a larger percentage of the K through 6. This is based on K through 6. So they're 32.7. Kingston stayed exactly the same at 56%, and Plimpton gets a slight relief down 0.2% for the K6 system. So these numbers are hot off the press, and unfortunately probably not going to be quite as welcome for Plimpton.
So is there a plan to reach out to FinCom? Selectmen about this, just so that,
We could have this sent to them. Would you like me to do that?
well, I think I defer to Jason since it's small. It's overhead.
Sure.
But I would think that the sooner we let them know the good news, just meaning we, the broader we.
What I
the
can
better.
do is...
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because that's gonna be.
I think I
it's
will
gonna-
send the enrollment information to all 3 selectmen and all 3 finance. They have gone, Kingston has already received this, and Halifax, I think, may have been at the meeting too, so it actually may only be something that we didn't have a representative here. But I will resend this out. And then the other couple things that I had was the budget timeline. This is something that I put together, and we've updated it a little bit. I think most people seem to find it fairly helpful to keep us on track as we're building the budget. So right now, Peter is working on developing a budget. It will be due to Christine by Thanksgiving. And then Melissa will also be looking at some of the curriculum materials that, may be needed, some extra supports if we are short some books, et cetera, in the classes. And we will also be working with Marie Grable, who will be giving us where the students are located, what the anticipated numbers are for our special education students. As I mentioned earlier, normally we ask Marie to present in November. I've moved her to December because of MCAS. So we'll, next month, Jill will be doing an MCAS presentation, and I think it would be too much to try to do both. So this month is when I'd like to ask you if you have any thoughts or dreams or hopes for the building that you would like to make sure that we include as we're building the budget. I'll take some notes, and I'm sure Pete will too, in terms of some of the things that you might have. I know that there's some building things Pete and I have talked a little bit about. The playground is something I know we've had an ongoing discussions about. I'd like to certainly keep that as part of a discussion. And obviously the water treatment will hopefully be done before we build the next budget, but if not, it's always thought. But I'm sure it will be done by then.
You're gonna knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and in thinking about the playground, that's going to be one that we need to spend a little bit of money up front before we can spend the money.
Yeah.
Because we need to have a plan that's fully vetted, that has a good budget in it, and all of that before we can even go and ask for
Yep, absolutely.
funds,
Yep.
whether it's from CPA or town or however we plan to do that. So, there will need to be money spent to get to that point that we can then push the project along for that. Do you folks have specific things that you wanted to speak to?
No, I don't. I mean, if you think you need something, present it. We know what it is, that's all.
And then I would just offer as a reminder, because we've talked about it in past years, is that the town does have that 5-year capital plan.
Yep.
So, the goal with that, and not everything can happen that way, but the goal with that is that we should endeavor not to be putting forward something for spending next year that has never showed up on the capital plan.
Right.
Just because that means we're perhaps not thinking, in most cases, that we're not thinking as forward as we need to.
Sure.
And I'd rather get something, the other piece I'd say is, I'd rather get something on the capital plan, even if we find, that we think it's going to be 3 years, we need to do this, and we get closer to it, and we're like, you know what, we can wait another 2 years.
Right.
That's okay.
Right. Right.
It's the other way that
Sure.
hurts. And then the other thing I would put up there is that, the big ticket items. I know we talk about 5 years, but I know we also talk regularly about the main roof here.
Exactly.
And if that's 8 years out, we should note that it's 8 years out, even though they're not asking. Because something big like that is, as we know from Halifax, is really big.
Really big.
And
Yeah.
that needs to be put into the thinking, especially as we're dealing with a lot of other capital issues. We are in the process of building the police station, and we have funds allocated for that, but there are going to be other items that happen there, and if, there might even be the driveway for the police station that we can't do as part of that, or whether we need something with fire services at some point, and so on. And so there's a lot of long-range thinking that goes beyond the 5-year plan, so for
Sure.
really big things, I think that's...
It might not be a bad idea to have the facility manager in those conversations, maybe,
Absolutely. We've started that a little bit.
If she comes down
Right.
and walks the property and
Right.
and gives her thoughts.
I reached out to Carol last week, and we're going to hopefully get together this week, and one of the things that is going to be discussed is the roof. And I just want her to just start to get the feel of the building a little bit, some of the things that I've been dealing with on not day to day, but certainly month to month, things that come up, so I'm anxious to get her input.
So, just so you know, the roof is something that we definitely should make the capital planning committee aware of. Assuming that, we've had some leakage, not horrible, but, you know, usually once it begins, it doesn't get better on its own. And I believe we are past the 20-year mark, or
If not, we're right there.
yeah, right at the edge. So for just a little bit of information, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the roof has to be 20 years old before you can apply. And you have to have done sort of an analysis of the roof, and there's a tremendous amount of documentation that needs to be submitted. It is quite a difficult process, very involved in terms of it. You have to apply by the grant opens in January, you have to apply by mid-February. The turnaround is absurd in terms of the amount of required paperwork. Right as you're building all your budgets, by the way. It's like really great timing to get all that done. And then you have to, the town would have to make a commitment by the summer, if you make it through their approval process, that they're going to support the process. So it's this really massive time frame. Then you go out to bid, and it starts the following summer. So it's like almost a year and a half ahead of when you actually begin the process.
So do you have to do all of that pre-work, like right before you submit it in January? I mean, because
We could
you
start
almost
some of
need
the
to-
pre-work now, just to get a sense of what the shape of the roof is. Is it something that really is critical, time critical? And then the following January, we could think about applying. Or maybe we could wait 3 or 4 more years. I mean, I honestly,
Well, I mean, it's
you know, it's, the town has to be at a point that they can fund it. You know, the help.
but I don't think we can ask the town if they can fund it if we don't know.
Right,
what
the beginning part would be the assessment of
You
the
know,
roof.
I
That's step
think-
one.
I think we need at least some initial assessment work done.
Absolutely.
To understand potential cost. Granted, that's just,
Mhm.
as we've seen,
Mhm.
that's just a fictitious number until you get a bid almost.
Exactly.
But we need to have some idea of scope and scale.
Right.
And then also of timing.
Right.
Because it sounds to me that we're not talking 8 years out, we're talking somewhere in the 5, potentially.
I would tend to guess. I would tend to
Which
guess
means
you're
that that
correct.
needs to go on to the capital planning
Yes,
form this year.
that'd be great.
So we would need, by February, we would need to have an assessment, at least high level,
Mhm.
of what folks think and what potential,
Right.
you know, range of costs could be
Right.
on that.
The other number, which again was talked a little bit about last year, is the phone system. You may
Yep.
remember we
And
discussed that.
that's on the plan.
Right. So the phone system is something that is
Old.
old. I don't remember how old.
Old and
Cranky.
getting worse.
Yeah. So that is something that we also will need. Those are the 2 big ticket items. I think that Pete and I have chatted a little bit about. I don't know if there's anything else. I think the rest
Light
is fairly
switches.
normal. Light switches, yeah. You don't like
Reinvesting in
toggles?
light switches, Joe.
Yeah. You don't like toggles? I don't know. They're kind of fun.
Technology,
We're actually, I think, in pretty good shape.
Steve Pello and I had a conversation the other day. We're in outstanding shape. And again, I can say that on this date, in 3 years from now, a year from now,
Yeah.
it'll be a completely different conversation. Steve and I went down the list of what we have in the building, what's up to date. Knock on wood,
But we're investing every year, it's part
Right,
of the
exactly.
standard
We've been
budget.
maintaining,
And so
yeah.
it's not like where we were 3 years ago,
Right.
where we could see we were behind and
Exactly.
online testing was sort of like, how are we gonna do that?
Right.
Shut this room down for 3 weeks to
Yep.
try and get that done, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Right.
but we're continuing, so the hope is that we're gonna maintain most of this unless
Right.
some new technology pops up.
Yeah,
that
no, we're
we're sort
doing
of,
pretty well.
and we're retiring things as we need to, and
Correct.
Yeah.
and didn't we do a lot of work with the Wi-Fi in here too?
A lot.
Yeah.
Building-wise, we're in terrific shape.
I mean, and Pete's done a great job of painting and keeping up,
Yeah.
and, you know, we finally got some of those tiles that kept cracking. I think we finally got those.
We're on top of most of them.
But yeah, they're coming along, and,
the Chromebooks were, it's all good.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
good.
yeah. So the main things are really going to be that phone system and the roof in terms of large ticket items, at least at this point in time. The other thing which may happen when they do the roof, just so you know, when they come in, they may also look at windows. Because that's what happened in Halifax, was when they got a hold of the roof, when they came in, they also were like, you want the windows and doors replaced. So that was sort of added on. So I don't know if the windows here are as bad as they are in Halifax, but in Halifax, they were all,
Didn't we replace them all with the renovation? I'm pretty
I
sure they were all.
can't remember. So did we not, we replaced the windows but not the roof? I
I
apologize.
don't think we did the roof. I know that. We didn't. I
I,
think the windows.
it was prior to me being here, I've been here 12 years, so the windows are probably at least 12 years old, because they were prior to me. You know, most windows, I think, have about a 20-year warranty. I honestly don't know when it happened.
So the state made them do the windows, or who
Um,
wanted the windows?
They
Because-
came in and they recommended, since we were doing the project, that if we were to do it, and then also we're doing all the siding, the fascia boards, the rain gutters, they were all failing. I mean, you know
Well,
how they get that, you know how they
building
get that
has-
funky kind of color?
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's nice breeze too.
Yeah, the breeze was-
Well, that's a whole
yeah,
separate.
yeah. I don't know that
think
they're
we
bad
have-
here. I
I'm
honestly
pretty sure
don't.
that, I thought they did all the windows when they did the project, when they came in and redid the old part of the building.
I honestly don't know.
I can ask Susan, she, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
And that was
I-
2000, wasn't it?
2000, yeah, sounds fun.
Motivation.
2000. Yeah,
Oh, fine. Oh, so it's just before I got here?
Right,
Okay.
so we're,
in 06, so you're only 12 years.
yeah.
There ever been
This is
any-
Plimpton, you're gonna go long, if it's 20 years that people start thinking about it, you're going longer than 20 years.
I got 30, okay.
I
Sounds
mean,
great. But again, you know,
Yeah,
just
more
sort of giving you
Yankee than
that, just from my experience in Halifax. But those are the only things that at this point that we have. We're feeling pretty good about the materials that we have. We have great staff. We don't anticipate the need for that, so.
So I'm
we're
gonna
feeling
bring up
pretty
the
good
one
about
I
that.
always bring up too, now that we have a facilities coordinator and hopefully we'll have a town administrator in the near future, when you have this facilities coordinator here, you should look at the parking lot and the driveway. And, but given this sort of, you know, given that the school committee technically has charge over this, but, you know, what do we know about driveways and things like that? And, you know, Mr. Mulcahy and the highway department is very good at
Yeah,
helping
been very
out
kind to us.
and all that. There needs to be a plan.
Mhm.
And my hope is that if we have a new town administrator, that's something that the school committee could, and so can we kind of work together and help pull everyone together and figure out what is it that we need to be thinking about?
Mhm.
Can we leverage expertise from the highway department? Can we figure out what we're maintaining? Are we seal coating anything? Should we be just planning that part of it needs to be completely done? I mean, we certainly have some spots that are sketchy, maybe with some Band-Aid duct tape on them.
Yes.
But it's, to me, that's another big potential capital area, because I know paving isn't cheap.
Right.
And that should be on someone's plan somewhere.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. So we'll bring up discussion again next month, give you a little bit more time if you come up with some other ideas. We'll continue to work with Pete, and as I said, I think Kara's coming out, and she's going to do a bit of a tour of the building and a roof special, and we'll see how we go from there.
great,
Okay? Thank you.
okay. There is no need for an executive session tonight, so I don't have anything additional, anything for either of you? No? Well, then I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Would you like the honors? I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, great. So, second. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you and good night.
Thank you. Great meeting.